and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. This is Newshour Agenda and I'm Heena Gambhir. Viewers, India's AI171 Ahmedabad to London Gatwick flight crashed soon after takeoff on 12th of June, which is yesterday. There were 242 people on board. The Dreamliner nightmare just left one survivor. It was a day family members of 241 flyers will never ever forget. The scars will never heal. Imagine a tragedy that snatches away loved ones and then relatives and friends have to wait and go through the agony of DNA tests, matching of samples to get the mortal remains. But the crash, viewers, didn't just claim the lives of those on board, but 29 more unsuspecting people on the ground who were in the ill-fated aircraft's crash path. Every teary eye awaits not just the remains of their loved ones, but also answers to what caused this tragedy. What happened to one of the most modern flying machines with multiple layers of safety procedures as well as instruments. The first step towards what happened to AI171 was taken today, with the probe team recovering the black box from the burnt and multi-layered debris of the aircraft. The black box perhaps holds the key to what happened in those 59 seconds from takeoff to the tragic crash. The Civil Aviation Ministry's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau has started the probe. It will be assisted by a team from America's National Transportation Safety Board, which is on its way to Ahmedabad. Their team will include officials from the plane maker Boeing and General Electric, the maker of the twin engines. The probe result will take some time to come, but aviation experts have started raising questions, and some pertinent questions. Question number one, is Boeing Dreamliner safe to fly? The Air India plane that crashed, viewers, was a Boeing Dreamliner 787. It has earned the black mark of being the first Dreamliner to crash. Boeing told the world in 2011 that 787 is a benchmark in aviation safety standards. Boeing, which forms an aviation duopoly with Airbus, claimed that it's the best next-gen aircraft. But it was seen flying like a stricken bird and crashing seconds after takeoff. Question number two that the experts have raised. Is there a case for Boeing Dreamliner fleet across the world to be grounded? At least in India, till all the boxes are ticked. Now that question is being asked because of Boeing's checkered history. Let me explain here. Why are we raising this question? Why are the experts raising this question? You know, in 2013, the 787-8 Dreamliner fleet was grounded in the United States of America. Why? Due to overheating of its lithium-ion batteries, which sparked fires in some cases. Next, a whistleblower, John Barnett, a quality manager, shocked the aviation world by raising several safety concerns about manufacturing of 787 Dreamliner. He retired in 2017 but continued his legal battle. In fact, in an interview in 2019, he claimed workers were forced to install substandard parts to meet deadlines. And there is more, viewers. Last year in March, Barrett was found dead. Yes, the whistleblower, whose pictures we are going to be showing to you in just a bit. The whistleblower was found dead. Then there was another whistleblower who called it a ticking time bomb. An engineer of Boeing, Sam Salepur, raised concerns, serious concerns around the Dreamliner. He accused the company of cutting corners in the production of both 777 and 787 Dreamliners. He wrote to FAA, America's FAA, in January 2024, just last year, accusing Boeing of taking production shortcuts that could compromise aircraft safety. He said Boeing's assembly process for 787 involved forcing misaligned fuselage sections together, sometimes with workers physically. Now, listen to this carefully. That's what he claimed. Sometimes with workers physically jumping on parts to align them. Naturally, the company denied these allegations, but this prompted an investigation by Federal Aviation Administration. And it's not just the Dreamliners, by the way, 787s that I'm talking about. Two of Boeing's 737 MAX planes crashed within a span of 6 months, killing 346 people. In October 2018, Indonesia's Lion Air crashed. Then in March 2019, 737 MAX flown by Ethiopian Airlines crashed shortly after takeoff. That time, the global fleet of 787 MAX was grounded. And now, in India, in 2025, 270 people, viewers, have lost their lives in a tragedy involving a Boeing aircraft. That too, a Boeing Dreamliner. India's aviation watchdog DGCA has already ordered additional inspection on Boeing 787-89 fleet of Air India. As a preventive measure, DGCA has directed Air India to carry out additional maintenance actions with immediate effect. The airline has been asked for one-time check before departure. DGCA has listed certain parameters. Airline has been asked to introduce flight control inspection in transit inspection until further notice. Power assurance checks to be carried out within 2 weeks. Closure of maintenance action based upon review of repetitive snags during last 15 days on Boeing 787-8 and 9 aircraft. DGCA has asked the airline to submit a report. But the irony, viewers, of the situation is that there are just 2 aircraft-making behemoths in the entire world. Majority of aircraft across the globe are either Boeing or Airbus. They are unable to meet demands for more as aviation is growing. What choice do people have? What choice do the flyers have? Who will bail the big cats of aviation? And should the Boeing 787 Dreamliners be grounded? That's the question that experts around the world are asking today.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And joining me on this debate this evening is Aurobindo Handa, former DG Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, India, former chairman, Accident Investigation Group. He's joining us live right now. Marco Chan, former pilot and senior lecturer, from Buckinghamshire New University, joining us live this evening. John Strickland, aviation consultant and director, JLS Consulting, also live with us right now. And Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, who's also with us this evening. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newshour Agenda this evening. Today, we got one update that the black box has been recovered. So, of course, now the probe is going to eventually tell us what led to this fatal crash. But I want to move a little ahead as far as this entire story is concerned, because here we are talking about human lives. In total, 241 people were inside the aircraft who lost their lives. And apart from that, 29 people were outside who perhaps came in the way of this particular aircraft and the way it crashed. They lost their lives. In total, 270 lives have been lost. So I want to ask you, is it time to perhaps think of grounding the fleet, the entire fleet of Dreamliners, not just in India but across the world? Because not once but many a times in the past, safety concerns have been raised as far as the Dreamliner is concerned. And I'm not even talking about the 737 MAX and the issues that that aircraft has faced. I'm talking about Dreamliner specifically. Let's begin this question with Mr. Aurobindo Handa. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is premature to ground 787s as of now, because as of now we don't know the exact cause. Once we identify the root cause, then certainly there is a procedure of institution of checks. So we need to wait, because today only the DFDR has been made available. So it will take about 3-4 days by the time some data, some input is available to the team or to AIB. So let's wait for that input, and certainly based on that, should there be any cause of grave concern, then there is a procedure of checks and institution of checks, one-time check, or say we can refer back to Boeing through NTSB. So what is to be done, and then some airworthiness orders, they can come from there. So I think as of now we should not go in for a knee-jerk reaction. Just give them about a week, 10 days. That's my view.
Okay. Marco Chan, what is your point of view? Do you also feel it's perhaps premature to ground 787? Because, I'm looking at the history of Dreamliner here. In early years, Dreamliner faced significant issues related to its lithium-ion batteries. In 2013, that prompted a global grounding of the fleet. Then, what about the whistleblower warnings that have come repeatedly and specifically for the Dreamliners, which is Boeing's perhaps safest and the best and the most high-tech aircraft that it talks about today?
Now, I understand the frustration from the general public, but remember that first, grounding an entire aircraft type is an extraordinary decision, one that regulators don't take on lightly. And right now, we don't have clear evidence that points to design flaw in the Boeing 787 with this current incident. It's flown millions of safe flights globally for more than a decade. So if the investigators uncover anything that poses a systemic risk to the fleet, regulators like FAA, EASA, DGCA, they will act very quickly. And that is how the system is built. But until then, grounding the fleet on speculation could cause unnecessary panic and disruption. So remember, the whole industry is driven by data, not just headlines alone. And we have to be very careful. And especially now, we have uncovered the black boxes. So I would imagine that the authority will be investigating, looking at the data, and give us some sort of direction very quickly.
Okay. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, I want to ask you, it's not about a cheap Chinese phone that we are talking about that exploded catching fire. It's a machine costing crores. It's a machine that fell down, crashed. We do not know the reason. It cost us the lives of 241 inside the aircraft, 29 outside the aircraft.
Good evening, Heena, and good evening to my fellow panelists, all of whom are experts. I speak strictly as a layman, so I apologize on that front up. I have three very brief points to make. And of course, firstly, what you say is absolutely true. Everyone is concerned about the safety aspects of it. But I want to put, again, as a layman, facts on the table and then leave the viewers to decide what is the best option available. And since yesterday, understandably so, there have been, especially your viewers and so many other people who are very anxious as far as air travel is concerned. So I would just like to put the facts on the table and reassure everyone that air travel is the safest mode of travel. In fact, it is 10 times safer than train travel, and in India it is 17 times safer than train travel. And of course, even one accident is one too many, especially if it's a fatal crash. But please remember, since the induction of the Dreamliner 15 years ago, this is the first and only fatal crash. In fact, since 15 years post-induction, Dreamliner has completed 30 million flight hours. And this is the first one. But as I said, these are just facts that I'm putting on the table. If they reassure people, that's great. But at the same time, we really need to find out the reasons why this happened, because this, of course, we cannot afford this to happen again. Now, a couple of quick points. Number one, as far as the DGCA is concerned, that is the regulatory authority that overlooks everything that is a safety concern. Ironically, of course, there are a lot of problems with our regulatory agencies. That said, and I'm all for making them completely independent constitutionally like the CAG. Right now, they're not. They are appointed by the government, and that's a big mistake because they can be under the influence of private players, as we've seen in TRAI and other telephony sectors. Here, ironically, the Indian air safety record has improved over the last 5 or 7 years. There could be multiple reasons for that, increased reportage being one. But the fact is, over the last 5 years, DGCA has enforced on average 500 enforcement every year. That is an increase of 25%. It has fined more airlines, although I don't know whether that makes a difference. But more importantly, it has conducted almost 5,000 surveillance checks that are related to safety. And that is the reason why India's now on the air safety index jumped from 102 rank to 48 rank. Be that as it may, as I said, one must go to the bottom of this. Now, one problem that I have with, again, as a layman with the flight data recording thing, is that even though, yes, it's been procured, and of course, we would know the reality in the coming days. But as you've seen from the visuals that you made public yesterday, it took only 30 seconds from actually liftoff to the crash of the plane. And in fact, more worryingly, only the last 10 seconds were problematic. The 20 seconds or 30 seconds, there was no issue at all. So I don't know what information can be gleaned from those paltry 7 to 10 seconds. That is, of course, for the experts to say. Finally, I would like to say this. Every accident is an accident that is unacceptable. But at the same time, unless we find out the reasons without speculation, I think we would be doing disservice not only to the pilots, Heena, but also to the people who are flying.
Well, absolutely. Some very important points you've made, and I want to take those across to my other guests who've joined us as well. We have Air Marshal Dr. Rajiv Sachdeva, former Center Director, National Technical Research Organization. We also have with us John Cox, former pilot and CEO and Safety Operating Systems. Good evening to both of you as well. John Strickland, coming to you. You know, tonight this question is also being asked because we did see grounding of 737 MAX taking place by Boeing, the global fleet, because there were 2 back-to-back crashes within a span of 6 months. And here, first time, as Dr. Ranganathan also mentioned, first time, you know, this particular Dreamliner has also crashed. Is it because of a monopoly that we have to wait for proof but live with the risk?
No, I don't believe that's the case at all. We do have, as you say, 2 major suppliers of aircraft to the world's airlines, Boeing and Airbus. Both have had very good safety records until Boeing blotted its copybook, so to speak, from 2018 onwards with those 2 crashes that you rightly mentioned of the 737 MAX aircraft. And that has led to them coming under incredible regulatory scrutiny in their home country, in the USA, and indeed from regulators the world over. They've been through 3 CEOs since those accidents happened, and certainly many things have come out of the shadows, which quite honestly never should have been in the shadows in terms of the way the company had gone. You could say a cultural change where there was not the kind of focus, the preeminent focus on safety and quality that one would expect from Boeing, a company that nearly 1 century vintage in producing airliners. But that work is still going on. The manufacturer is still under restriction. The current CEO is definitely doing all the right things in terms of changing the culture of the business, showing much more transparency, even in the message of condolence that he's issued to Air India in the last 24 hours, and of course Boeing taking part in the investigation of this particular tragic accident. But you mentioned earlier about the 787 when it came into service more than a decade ago, having challenges with its lithium batteries, which is correct. But that is an issue which is now well understood, and rectification was made to ensure that that could not cause an accident, a catastrophic accident. And I would concur with what your panelists have said so far in terms of we have very well tried and tested safety procedures in place, investigating accidents. We have to get the data from the black boxes of the aircraft, along with the visual evidence and the debris, before we jump to any ill-informed decisions concerning the aircraft's ability to stay in service. And we also have to recognize the progress Boeing has and is making. They know they are not out of the woods yet, and they have to get back to that position of exemplary safety performance.
Okay. Okay, let me take those points across to Air Marshal Rajiv Sachdeva as well. What is your point of view? Because there are several questions today being asked as far as Boeing Dreamliner is concerned, and it was considered as uncrashable aircraft. And for Boeing also, it was something, you know, that was extremely safe. It was Dreamliner's, in fact, first crash that took place, and that is the reason why these questions become pertinent today. And, you know, how can we ignore the warnings that have come from whistleblowers? For example, in April 2024, Sam Salehpur, Boeing engineer for more than a decade himself, publicly alleged that Boeing had taken dangerous shortcuts in the manufacturing of its 777 and 787 Dreamliner models. Why shouldn't these be taken seriously? Why, you know, should we not ask questions of the manufacturer here?
Good evening, everybody, and my panelist. First of all, who says we are not going to ask the questions? We will definitely ask the questions. We've lost lives. We've lost an aeroplane. We've actually shaken the entire world. Everybody's talking about this airline, which has already flown so many for the last 15 years. Safely for the last 15 years, we've not had an engine failure. This engine is so well designed that it can suck up bird and throw it out. The Hudson kind of thing can never happen with these kind of engines. You just mentioned 77 MAX was grounded across the world because back to back, mark your words, back to back, there were similar accidents. This is the first in a million case that an accident like this has happened. Okay, let's say if we go by what you are saying that let's ground the aeroplane, what caution are you going to give to the team which is going to ground the aeroplanes? Okay, check so-and-so, what? We don't even know what went wrong. Was it the pilots? Was it the aircraft? Was it the engines? Because engines and aircraft are two different companies. So you're saying engines are bad or the aeroplane is bad or the pilots are bad? We know nothing as of now. So grounding an aeroplane without knowing even an iota of a reason why we are going to ground the aeroplane, what checks are you going to do when you ground the aeroplane? So it's not going to be like that. That's why the Boeing 737 MAX, when it went into those oscillation and went into the sea, they did not ground the fleet. Only when it happened the second time a similar thing, that's when the grounding part came and the checks came up and the computers were sorted out. Similarly here, unless the flight data recorder or the cockpit voice recorder would have been heard by everybody by now, all those who are concerned, there you will come to know something. If that something says, okay, this particular thing to be checked in the aircraft, I'm sure by tomorrow the bulletin will be out because the cockpit voice recorder will give some kind of a caution. A check. Grounding an aircraft will only happen if there's something drastically wrong, which only the flight data recorder, like everybody said, will take week to 10 days. Yes, Anandji.
Okay, so in that case, John Cox, what should be done? How should we be looking at the existing scenario? Because there is fear among people, whatever you may say, people are now concerned in the aviation sector.
The concern is very understandable, but more importantly is letting the investigation progress. Right now, we do not know, we do not have information if there's a problem with the airplane, if there's a problem with the flight crew, whatever. So any steps taken until we understand what happened would be premature and potentially damaging. So I agree with the Air Marshal completely that says let's conduct the investigation with the proven methodology and have the experts lead us. And we will learn here quickly. We've got a good flight data recorder. We've got a good cockpit voice recorder. Those are going to tell the story. And although everybody in the digital world today wants an answer immediately, it's much more important to get the right answer than a fast answer. So let us be patient. The information will come quickly, and then the regulators and the airlines can work together to find the right solutions. But this airplane's been in service since 2011, and this is the first fatal accident. It's tragic, and we need to learn everything we can from it. But let's not take any steps until we understand what happened here.
Okay. Marco Chan, I also want to ask you, because you've been a pilot yourself. So I want to understand from you a little bit for the benefit of our viewers. When you see that 59-second video from takeoff to the tragic crash, what does it tell you? What could have possibly happened? Of course, most of you believe that perhaps it is premature to even consider grounding the entire fleet of Dreamliners across the world. But let's also focus a little bit on what possibly could have really gone wrong. What is your assessment?
So yeah, first of all, admittedly, the resolution of the video is rather low, but from what we can see anyway, it's quite obvious there's a loss of lift from the aircraft. It climbed okay initially, and then it leveled off, and it really struggled. But as you can see from the video as well, I believe the aircraft is pitching up. Quite possibly the pilot was trying to get the aircraft into a climb again, but quite obviously either the engine power wasn't sufficient enough to sustain a climb, or there's a loss of lift due to configuration of aircraft. Now, like I said, I can't see from the configuration directly, but there are some experts out there who seem to suggest there could be either the flap extension problem, they are not configured correctly, but we can't see from the video. Another possible scenario which I wanted to highlight is possible engine failure. Now, I know having a dual engine failure is a very rare occurrence, but it has happened before. Now, remember, I always say we can categorize engine failures into two subparts. One is visible, i.e. from a bird strike or from damage from a debris to the engine. Now, usually you will see smoke or fire coming out of the engine, but we can't really see that from the video at this stage. However, an internal failure that can be caused by computers or fuel supply is possible. Now, fuel supply issue causing engine failure, and in fact a dual engine failure, had that in London Heathrow Airport back in 2008. British Airways 777 at the short final going to a landing, the fuel supply was cut short due to a clock in the system. The engine was still running, but it wasn't at the power that the aircraft needed to sustain flight. So it crash landed onto the runway. Now, miraculously, no one passed away from the incident. But similarly, even we all of a sudden have an engine power sustainability issue, I believe investigators, like a couple of gentlemen here said on the panel already, look at the flight data recorder, listen to the cockpit voice recorder to understand what conversations have taken place in the cockpit, what they have been trying to do to save the situation. Now, I also understand there are questions as to the landing gear being extended at that stage. Now, I would just want to add at that point, remember, yes, it is quite unusual with the landing gear still extended at that stage, but part of procedures in the cockpit is for the pilots to verify whether the aircraft is in a positive climb or positive rate, depending on the type of aircraft you're with. Now, if initially it was climbing and then it was leveling off, quite possibly the pilots are saying, I don't think it is climbing, I don't think we have a positive climb, let's hold on with the landing gear, because for whatever reason it may be going towards the ground, we need the landing gear for sure. Now, another scenario is when the aircraft is not climbing, the primary action of the pilot is to ensure the aircraft can recover from its flight path. Changing configuration will then become secondary. We want to fly the aeroplane first. Another scenario is, think about human performance. It's in human nature to be startled. Remember, you've done thousands of flights, you expect aircraft in a 787 to climb normally, all of a sudden it's not climbing, quite naturally you'd be startled, so some actions could be delayed, which is perfectly understandable. Similar to the Hudson River event, Captain Sollenberger also mentioned the human factor side of things.
Okay, Dr. Anand Ranganathan wanted to come in. Yes.
Yeah, a couple of points I'd like to make. Of course, one must find out the reasons why this catastrophic crash happened, but I just want to illustrate to you how difficult it is and how I don't know the exact word to say, that how unworthy it would be for us to speculate. I mean, of course, the experts have given multitude of reasons and all of them are legitimate reasons, but let me give you the example. Around 14 months ago, Heena, there was a catastrophic, very similar descent that another Dreamliner faced on a flight from, I think it was Sydney to Auckland. Sudden descent, and 50 people out of them 20 were seriously injured inside the cabin. And they wanted to investigate what happened. How did that happen? Because out here also you see a descent. Turned out that the air hostess was, while serving the pilot, she slipped and bent down and accidentally flicked a switch on the pilot's seat. And that activated something that caused that descent. So, and I'm old enough to remember, the crash of the spaceship Columbia, and when I think Professor Richard Feynman was asked to investigate and found out that out of billions of dollars that were spent on the shuttle program, it was a simple rubber ring that was responsible for it. So unless we get to the bottom of it, I'm afraid all reasons, even though many of them would be highly logical or rational, should await the final disclosure.
Well, absolutely. Mr. Aurobindo Handa, we really need to get to the bottom of this, because this is something that we will never be able to forget. 241 people losing their lives in perhaps one of the most safest aircraft in the entire world. I want to ask you, because you've been, in the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, AAIB, that looks at serious incidents and accidents like these, that is monitoring and in fact investigating this entire case as well. So I want to ask you, how much time usually does it take? Tell us a little bit about how the investigation really happens, how much this black box can really help us get to the root of the issue.
Yeah, Heena, for a layman, if I have to say, I think after the analysis of DFDR and CVR and the corroboration, I think 60% of the investigation is done.
Okay.
But now each and every factor, each and every input which we have derived from these two black boxes, it has to be corroborated with whatever we are seeing, whatever evidences we are collecting. So this has to be, it's a very logical and a very institutionalized program. The investigation, it's not that if I'm the IIC, we call it IIC, I have my own way, or if someone else is detailed, he'll have his own way. It's a laid down procedure, and it has to pass through all and rule out each and every, I would say, each and every doubt which is there. So that is how it has to be done. And it is a time-consuming process, which the international protocols, they mandate is that preferably it should be done within a year, the final report. But the interim reports can be given in pieces. So should there be any alarming, say we come across any alarming defect or something like that, so we have to go to ICAO, so that all the countries which are operating this particular variant, they can take cognizance of that, and the institutional measures can be, instituted.
Okay. And roughly how much time do you think it's going to take AAIB to come up with that preliminary report? Because, you know, in the past we've seen serious incidents taking around 6 months to even 1 year for the report to, come out, for us to know what really happened. So in this case, are we supposed to live with this risk, say, for the next 3-6 months?
No, see, I'm very sure that the present leadership at AIB is sensitive enough and mature enough that if there is something worthwhile to share and they come across that particular thing, so they'll be immediately issuing it, they'll be taking it up with ICAO. So, but see, as of today, we don't know, even the DFDR has not reached Delhi. So it will be premature to say that what inputs are thrown out by the analysis of DFDR. So we should wait for, I think we should wait for about 15 days minimum. By the time the team is cobbled up and they put their minds together and they have something worthwhile coming out of it.
Okay, interesting. Now, Air Marshal Rajiv.
See,
yes.
In any,
Yes, go ahead, finish your point.
No, I finished.
Okay. Air Marshal Rajiv Sachdeva, you know, while most of you, of course, feel that it's too premature to consider grounding the entire fleet of Dreamliners, today DGCA ordered Air India that there should be enhanced safety inspection of Boeing 787-89 fleet, and some specific directions have been given. Why do you think these directions have come in? Do you think perhaps they did see something to do with engineering, or something that needs attention in terms of maintenance that the airline needs to do? What do you make of these specific directions that have come in? Do they not point to, at least as far as the preliminary analysis is concerned, some kind of a concern around maintenance and engineering?
See, first of all, DGCA issuing these orders to Air India. See, they are inspecting Air India every now and then. That's the DGCA's job, that they're inspecting every airline now and then. So they have this study report with them. The way we all sitting on your channel are speculating, similarly, every pilot, every person who's involved with the aviation is speculating as to what would have gone wrong. I used to do it in the Air Force. Any accident, we used to immediately speculate before the inquiry results comes out. In that speculation by the professionals and the reports which they have found, maybe a caution has gone out. Nothing, no warning. There's no warning to Air India, just a caution. Why not look into this and this also? That's about all. I don't think they can give any firm orders even before hearing the cockpit voice recorder. So it won't, and you and I won't know what exactly has been told by the DGCA to the Air India. It's just a caution, nothing serious which we should worry about as to, yes, there was something wrong and DGCA has told Air India to do this. No. Nothing of that sort would have happened.
You know why we decided to raise this particular issue today? Because after this incident, after this
accident took place, there are people who are bringing up some really important issues, especially what the whistleblowers had raised. I spoke about what Sam Salepur mentioned. Then there was another whistleblower, John Barnett, who has been a former Boeing quality manager, who alleged that 25% of emergency oxygen systems on some 787 aircraft could fail during cabin depressurization. He also said that workers failed to follow procedures intended to track components through the factory, allowing defective components to go missing. I mean, these were some very, very serious allegations. Then there have been allegations, gentlemen, of investigations as well as whistleblower accounts suggesting that Boeing South Carolina facility, where 787s, the Dreamliners that we're talking about, where they are built, may have prioritized speed over safety. There was a lot of pressure on the company for delivery as well. We know all of that. There were battery issues, there were production issues, and then there were delivery issues as well. So does this incident not make, the perfect opportunity for us to also ask the manufacturer these specific questions, and perhaps for the FAA to also look at these problems very, very carefully? Because the problems that whistleblowers like Sam and John had raised, the FAA did find some merit in those particular issues. Shouldn't the company be more transparent now about, what the concerns were, what has been done? That question I want John Strickland to answer.
Yeah, so a valid point. I would just like to mention I visited Boeing late in 2019 after they'd had the two MAX crashes, and they were trying to convince people across the industry in a group that visited Seattle that they were putting things right. And at that time, they had Dennis Muhlenberg was the CEO. He subsequently lost his position not long after we had that visit. Certainly, I went there with a skeptical eye, but I was convinced they were making the right steps. Having said that, we then saw more things coming out in the subsequent year or so following, and another CEO was in place. He then left last year. But in some ways, we saw the catalyst of the emergency door separating on an Alaska Airlines plane at the beginning of last year. I think that really put the absolute focus on Boeing, that they had to put things right. I was certainly at a loss to see this company, as I mentioned earlier, lose its preeminent focus on safety. And I believe now that if the penny hasn't dropped, if that message hasn't got through, I'd be astonished, because the credibility has been badly damaged. There's been incredible legal cases. They've had to work hard to convince both the traveling public, the airline customers, and the regulators they are now doing things right. There can be nothing worse than a fatal or even a serious accident for a manufacturer in terms of its credibility. So the kind of questions raised by whistleblowers in the past, and anyone else who would see the need to do that in the future, have to be taken seriously. And I think part of the work that the current CEO is doing is to ensure that they do have an open culture, that they do encourage people in their own workforce to put forward concerns they have without fear of retribution. I think that was a challenge in the past. There was a bit of a secretive approach. People felt at risk to make these statements, and then they should be fully investigated and find out whether there's validity or not in those claims, so that Boeing can get back to this position of a preeminent focus on safety and get that credibility back and stop the need for these kind of questions being asked.
Okay. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, I know you want to respond, but I just want to quickly highlight how in June 2024, there was another whistleblower who came forward alleging that parts of Boeing's 787 Dreamliner planes were built in an unsafe manner, potentially leading to devastating consequences.
No, absolutely. Couple of points out here, just to extend, from what John has said. By all means, Heena, you are absolutely factually correct, and any allegations made by any whistleblower has to be taken very seriously. That said, the FAA is on record to have mentioned that it has till now in its history taken only 8.5% of the complaints by whistleblowers and extended it to further investigation. So hardly 10% of them are taken forward. Number two, there have been accusations, especially with Sam that you mentioned, that FAA was found to be very lenient and much was expected of it, and it did not act. Hence, I want to say one thing, couple of points. it's not just India alone that is using the Dreamliner. The Dreamliner right now, there are 1,200 Dreamliners all around the world flying. So it's not a question that India has been found wanting or we've been particularly affected by it. If, for example, inaction has been taken by the industry, then it is affecting more than 60, 70 nations. So that's point number one. That is at least it cushions a lot of anxiety that just Indians might have. Number two, all the more reason that we should not worry about FAA or its alleged links with the private players. Our DGCA should be totally independent like the CAG, so that any investigation that it carries out is without any influence of any private player, and that is an absolute must.
Okay, and Aurobindo Handa, do you agree with this point of view that Dr. Ranganathan has put across? And also, at least to begin with, can we expect DGCA to perhaps, order some kind of a safety audit of all the Dreamliners here in India that we have?
See, Air Marshal Sachdeva has already told you that we should have something tangible on which we need to act. So we need to exercise patience. Let something come out. Let some inputs be given by the investigating team. Based on that, the checks should be instituted, or one-time check should be instituted. Otherwise, we are groping in dark.
What do you like to say in that case, sir?
What
do you like to say in that case about the red flags that have been raised already? And all are talking about 787 Dreamliner only. Here I'm not even looking at the questions that were raised around 737 MAX or any other aircraft by Boeing. But for 787, it seems that corners were being cut.
Okay, I ask one counter question. The discussion was on the point that the DGCA has issued some 5-6 checks. They have sent a letter to Air India that because in India Air India is only operating 787s. So I would ask how they have come on those checks. Why not yesterday? Why not on the 11th of June? Why today? So, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I was keeping quiet. That doesn't make sense.
Okay.
That's reactionary. If we are so competent, then we should have woken up and we should have issued it before. That is called predictive, not reactionary. So let's wait for this. Now, when the accident has happened, now the ball is in AIB's court. It is no longer in DGCA's court. Wait for it. Let AIB guys and the investigating team, whichever is cobbled up now, let them come out with something, and then based on that, DGCA will issue. Then, based on those inputs, it is DGCA's job to get it done. Please understand the working of AIB and DGCA.
Okay.
While DGCA is a regulatory authority and they issue the checks, AIB doesn't do that. But when AIB finds it and they issue a recommendation or an interim recommendation, that is given back to DGCA to act upon. AIB does not interact with the airlines. Please understand.
Okay. Okay.
So there's a way. So AIB's role is only a fact-finding body.
Okay. So you're saying allow the facts to come out and then only perhaps look at what can be done and what should be done. Dr. Ranganathan wants to respond very quickly, and then John Cox.
No, very quickly, I completely agree with the points that Mr. Handa has made, but with due respect, I'd like to say that the point I was making is completely detached from the conducting of the investigation. What I'm pointing out is that, as they say, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. Now, you know what happens when government to government, you have these multi-billion dollars deals running into hundreds of billions of dollars when you buy these aircrafts. In fact, India recently bought a clutch of Boeing aircraft, and every prime minister to president was congratulating each other. So when you have an agency that is looking into the safety of these very aircrafts that run into tens of hundreds of billions of dollars, there is a clear conflict of interest. I'm not insinuating anything wrong. What I'm saying is, as the adage goes, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. So pending the investigation, detached from it, we must have a completely independent agency looking into the safety aspect of these airlines.
Okay. Air Marshal Rajiv Sachdeva also wants to come in, and then John Cox.
See, as of now, we are all speculating. But the only thing which you have in your hand is the whistleblower's list of problems which he pulled out with the company. Get some professionals out, put the list out and see each of those, can they cause an accident like this? If not, then let the whistleblower thing be kept aside for the moment. Because if the whistleblower is saying that the stores were not managed correctly, will that cause this accident? Let's investigate each of these points and then say, yes, these are the 3-4 points which the whistleblower given can lead to an accident like this. By the time the inquiry can go on, they will find out what is wrong. Like you said, lithium battery. Lithium battery was an incident 10 years ago.
Sir, I remember that happened in 2013. But sir, then I'm talking about the red flags that were raised in April 2024 by Sam Salehpur, Boeing engineer for more than a decade, who said that dangerous shortcuts were taken in manufacturing of Boeing 777 and 787. And what do you say about those?
Was it because of fitting the passenger seats, or was it because of fitting the engine?
No,
was it because
do you think these should also be taken seriously? I mean, he himself said that, if Salehpur's allegations are accurate, the structural integrity of 787 might degrade far earlier, potentially putting lives at risk. These were the points that were made. John Cox. Okay.
There's several things here that we need to establish beyond question. One, you ask if we would need to wait months before a problem that was determined would be dealt with. That's not how the system works. If there is an issue that is discovered, Boeing will immediately issue a service bulletin, and it goes to the operators immediately. The regulatory agencies, both the HEC and as well as FAA, they will follow up with a mandatory airworthiness directive. So it's not a matter of we're going to wait in the darkness for some period of time. That's not how the system works. The system is much more attuned to addressing discovered issues in an investigation. Now, the next piece of this is we're talking about a tragic loss of a 787. Let's focus on that, stay with the facts of that investigation that are completely separate from previous incidents, whistleblower reports, all of which were investigated by the FAA and by independent bodies. So any assertion that these whistleblower events were not dealt with by the appropriate regulatory agencies is just not factual.
Okay.
And it's so the separation of and I've been an aircraft accident investigator for 35 years. You want to focus on this tragic event. You want to learn everything that we can about it. You want to get the information in the hands of the right people as quickly, but most importantly, accurately. Get that information. That's how the industry has become the safest form of transportation ever designed by humankind. This process works, and all of the attempt to bring additional allegations that may or may not be that have any effect in here is premature, and it's counterproductive.
Okay, we'll of course have to wait and see what comes out, because black box of course has been recovered and that holds the key. Hopefully in the next few days we'll get more clarity as to what went wrong. Was it something to do with the plane itself, or was it something else that led to this fatal crash? I'm completely out of time, but thank you very much all of you. Aurobindo Handa, Air Marshal Rajiv Sachdeva, Marco Chan, John Cox and John Strickland, and Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Appreciate all of you for joining us here and sharing with us your perspective on this very, very important subject. Thank you for joining us this evening. Heading into a short break.